Arthur, immortality is certainly a driver of most major religions. I've certainly been fascinated by it, not necessarily because I want something for myself, but just, I'm sure I do like everyone else, of course, but I just feel this is so important to discern that if religion is real, there has to be some ultimate purpose. So immortality is something we need to focus on. So let's talk about as far as individuals are concerned. And in Judaism, what is immortality? What does that mean and how does it work?
There are two aspects of immortality. The first aspect is the question is, in the immortal state, will there be individuals or will it be something communal? Mm-hmm. Now, I think the major teachings in Jewish tradition are that immortality is individual. And here the notion of the resurrection of the dead is central, because here the belief is that the body will be reconstituted, the soul will be put into the body, and there will be individual human beings living. This is one aspect. Now, if we come to the world to come, the crucial point here is that this will be a kind of an idealized state, which will happen, at least according to most Jewish thinkers, after the resurrection of the dead. And there will be a new heaven and a new earth, in the words of the prophet, which means there will be an ideal world, that is a world in which there will be no wars, there will be no sickness, that people live in good health, will lead a happy life, and this life will go on forever. Now,
okay, so this is interesting. What I seem to be hearing is a distinction between the resurrection of the dead and the world to come, as if these are two separate things. Most people would think they're the same thing.
No, these are separate. The resurrection of the dead is one sort of thing, and then the world to come is something that is in sequence of the resurrection of the dead. Okay, because there's no agreement on when exactly the resurrection of the dead will happen. Will it happen in Messianic times, or will it come after Messianic times? But whatever the solution of that issue is, the point that is very clear is that what will happen at the end will be an idealized kind of world. And there is a controversy that has been studied by scholars that for some of them it will be a restitution of the pre-Adamic state, of the ideal state in the Garden of Eden, while to many others, and I think this is sort of the prevalent ideas, it will be an idealized world which will be in sequence, in continuity of the world in which we live now, in which all the bad aspects of the world will be eradicated.
So just let's personalize it. You and I meet there, and we're friends, and we meet in these two different. What would the resurrection of the dead be like? Is that a physical world? Do we have bodies? Do we eat? Do we have physical pleasures? Is there sexuality? What is that world like?
No, absolutely. It will be a physical world according to most of them, and we'll again have this kind of discussion.
More knowledgeably, I hope.
More knowledgeably, because we'll have finally some experience of what the future world will be like.
Right.
But as far as we can guess now, it will be a physical world where there will be physical activity without the shortcomings of physical life. And it will be idealized in the sense that there will be no war, there will be no sickness, and that people will live in a happy kind of way, which is something that we should expect if this is the reward of the good things we did in this life.
Okay, so that's the resurrection of the dead. It's a physical life. It's an idealized physical life with all the good things of the physical life, in which there are many, and none of the bad things. And
yes.
and is there procreation? Are there children? Do you age? Do you grow up? Do you die?
There will probably be children. We will not die. At least according to most persons, because that'll be the idealized state, that there's no death, that there's no sickness, but that there will be people and there'll be ordinary kinds of activities.
Okay, now obviously we can think of a lot of questions and problems where, if you have children and nobody dies, eventually you're going to run out of space. But there are a lot of questions we can ask, but it's interesting that the resurrection of the dead, at least the majority of Judaism, is a physical resurrection and a physical life. Now, let's then go to the world to come, because that comes later and that's something different, and that's not physical in the same way. Is that correct?
No, that again depends on the person. According to mainline Jewish thinking, that the world to come will be in continuity with the resurrection of the dead. And what we have talked about, this idealized world, is really largely the world to come. Maimonides, a Jewish philosopher of the 12th century, has a much more spiritualized conception of what the world to come is like. It is firstly based on one's understanding of God and spiritual matters, and the existence, according to Maimonides, of persons in the world to come will be a non-physical existence. More than that, he thinks that the nature of the world as it is now will not change. So there's a kind of discontinuity between the world today and the world to come, which, according to the more mainline doctrine, is a continuity between this world and the world to come, where the world to come will be a kind of an idealized world.
So it sounds like we have some uncertainty, which is not all that surprising considering the subject, between some who think that the resurrection of the dead is physical, which everybody agrees with, then in some interpretations kind of flow into the world to come, which also maintains continuity with this world, although some, I guess Maimonides being a prime example, has a resurrection of the dead, and that flows into a world to come that has a discontinuity, where it's this disembodied intellect, so to speak.
Well, the discontinuity is Maimonides wrote a separate work on the resurrection of the dead, one point of which is that those who are resurrected will die again and then will inhabit the spiritual world.
So it's a very clear discontinuity.
So it's a very clear discontinuity. And some people wonder why Maimonides really has to speak about the resurrection of the dead if the end point of human existence is a spiritual or an incorporeal existence. Now, he believes in it because he speaks about it in all of his works. But this kind of continuity is not in what I would think the mainline tradition of the relation of the resurrection of the dead and the world to come is. Because in the mainline tradition, the world to come is still physical, though an idealized physical world, and is in continuity with the resurrection of the dead, and in continuity with the world as it is now.
You began with a fascinating concept that distinguishing between, is our immortality in Judaism an individual immortality, or is it a collective immortality, which is more associated with Eastern religious traditions. But even within Judaism, we've had that kind of tension that some believe that our immortality might be this collective immortality.
Well, the main doctrine is it's an individual immortality, because people get judged on what they do, and they will be rewarded, as the case might be, punished. There are some philosophers, not too many, who think that there's a kind of a collective immortality, that there are no individuals in that. But this is a minority opinion, and I would say that the mainline Jewish tradition is that in the world to come, in the afterlife, individuality will be preserved, as I guess one would expect, because if individuals get judged, then their individuality should be retained. And this is the main belief, I believe, of Jewish tradition.